A very warm welcome to everybody joining us this morning for what is now the ninth of our live webinars, covering a variety of different subjects across the world of sport and business. We're delighted this morning to be joined by Paul Mallon from Paddy Power and Vicky Donlan from Leopardstown, and they're going to be guiding us through a look back on what emerged as one of the key sponsorships of this year. In fact, one of the last major signings of a new sponsorship. Hopefully, it will be joined by others during the course of the year. But we live in peculiar times. But this, as part of the Dublin Racing Festival, was Paddy Power's bringing its heft and its expertise and its strong connection, both to Leopardstown and the sport, to bear in terms of one of Ireland's leading horse races. Without further ado, I'll hand over to Paul and Vicky. We will be having an open Q&A, so anything that you see that you want to have explained to you in greater detail, we'll be able to come back to that at the end of this session, which I think will last from about 35 to 40 minutes. We guarantee that we'll have you out of here by 12 noon. But until then, I leave you in the capable hands of Paul and Vicky.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks very much, Rob. Yeah, so as Rob very kindly said, we're just here to have a chat about what we've done with our partnership between Paddy Power and the Irish Gold Cup, which is the feature race of Dublin Racing Festival at Leopardstown. Quickly, quick history on Dublin Racing Festival was created only 3 years ago. This 2020 was the third year. So it's a relatively new festival, but it was an amalgamation of all the top quality races brought together over one weekend to basically do a showcase of championship racing. And there was a couple of aims for it. Primarily it was from a racing point of view to gather all the top class races in one weekend, but secondly to engage the Dublin audience and wider audience, and it's a celebration of the best of Dublin as well. So Dublin Racing Festival is the main feature, is top class racing, but it's supported by a full programme of entertainment and other activities too. So Paddy Power and Leopardstown have an ongoing long-term relationship, which has been very successful over the years. And the opportunity came up for the for sponsorship of the Irish Gold Cup. So the Irish Gold Cup is a Grade 1 steeplechase race, which is Grade 1 in racing, is the best quality race that there can be. So it's a very historic race. It's been ran since 1987. It's a leading trial for the Cheltenham Gold Cup too, which is an important link that we'll touch on again later in the presentation as well, about expanding the sponsorship outside of one day. So the chat came about, but basically just the opportunity came up, and as we said, we've got a great relationship with Paddy Power as well, so the conversation naturally started and developed from there. So the opportunity, as I said, was not only the sponsorship of the Irish Gold Cup too, but it's a partner too of Dublin Racing Festival, and then also feature sponsor of day two, so it was ownership of that day as well.
Yeah, if you know, asking why did we get involved or what were our motivations for getting involved, I think number one, we'd probably underinvested in racing for a few years, and that Chase Day at Christmas was our big one. And while we'd done some sponsorships between retail and online at Paddy Power, in terms of the online business in Paddy Power, we had very little, especially in Ireland. So this came up. You look at the caliber of the card, extraordinary. I think it's 8 Grade 1s over 2 days, which is immense. The quality of the racing, you got horses that are very familiar to people, and also in terms of timelines and the road to Cheltenham in February, it's a really compelling reason to invest in this race at this festival.
This is only an overview of some of the main kind of rights and assets that go with this, with the sponsorship. There was an offer to anyone who partnered with us. So there's the naming rights to the race, which extends out. It's the association with an historic event. It's an awareness within the media and the fan base of horse racing as well. And then the support of a potential brand would resonate with the fans, because they would have a very emotional association with this race as well, due to the history and the famous horses that have ran in it and won it in the past as well. As I touched on before, there's an official partner of Dublin Racing Festival too. So it was that with partnership with this would be we'd jointly promote Dublin Racing Festival and the Irish Gold Cup as well, so that our partner for the Irish Gold Cup would be an integral part of our marketing campaign as well. Venue branding as well. So venue branding, there's two elements to that. There's branding to the on-site audience, and then there's branding through TV as well, because the event is broadcast live on RTE, as well as dedicated Sky Channel racing TV. There's an opportunity too for engage with our on-site audience, and then there's activation, which we'll go into a little bit more later about before the event and during the event as well. And then obviously too, associated with any sponsorship with a sporting event, there's exclusive access to hospitality and tickets.
And I think just from my side, I think what we look for in a good partner is Paddy Power, and we've done a number of football partnerships over the year, and obviously a load of racing partnerships. It's the what else factor. So when we were signing this deal and sitting down up at Leopardstown to go through it one by one, like one of the best things we've said about Leopardstown, and a similar approach to when we worked at Arsenal in the past, is, you know, you think about, you want to do something, they say, okay, well, what about this? What about this? And I've said that, you know, going up there to Leopardstown, walking around, there's some new stalls, and they very much took it, have you thought about this approach? Or what about this approach? Or would you like to do this? So it's kind of that opening up their assets to us, and even presenting to us a deck of ideas on, you know, here's some thoughts we've had as an organisation about what Paddy Power would like to take on. And it certainly gets the juices going then when a partner is so open to, you know, working with you, as opposed to just slapping your name on something and walking away.
I think from our point of view too, it was a great opportunity to kind of let some of the guards down as well, and and could do a little bit of out of the box thinking as well. And I know our team, we really enjoyed sitting down and going, well, what could we do? Because Paddy Power obviously are renowned for the amazing activations that you do. So it was an opportunity for us to really push ourselves and think, okay, well, what hasn't been done in racing, and what could we do?
I think you wanted to get the jockeys to wear capes because they're superheroes, Vicky. But
I still think that's a good idea. There's a lot of underpants as well in our ideas.
Underpants are mentioned, yeah.
You've still got to work on getting Ruby to wear those green underpants while presenting racing TV. So I'll just pass over to Paul a bit here, and he's just going to give you a little bit of a background.
So I'm head of brand for racing for Paddy Power in the UK and Ireland, as well as head of marketing for Paddy Power generally in Ireland. This is just to explain a little bit about our heritage and our racing heritage. So the visual here is a somewhat famous thing we did at Cheltenham in 2010, which was the Paddy Power Hollywood sign on the hill. We'd actually planned to recreate this in 2020 on the Friday of Cheltenham, the Thursday, Friday of Cheltenham. Called it off at the last minute, but because of the circumstances in the world. But kind of our business was built on racing. We're very much, you know, a lot of our turnover comes from racing between Paddy Power, Betfair and Sky Bet as a merged entity. You know, it's a huge slice of the pie. And then somewhere around 2015, 2016, we probably took our eye off the ball a little bit when we started to invest a lot more in football. So I think what I wanted to kind of emphasize here is that Paddy Power is a business built on racing. And we certainly, about a year ago, restructured some of the marketing teams to put a little bit of emphasis back onto horse racing. And for the reasons we did the Dublin Racing Festival in itself, there's a job there to do to promote the Gold Cup in itself, but also the Dublin Racing Festival, and as a wider part of that in terms of the project one is promoting racing itself. And then just to explain a little bit about the segments or who we market to within racing. There's essentially two audiences and two profiles here, a mass market audience and what we call proper punters. So I've used Aisling Bia as the example of a mass market punter. Why they do it for social currency, for a bit of crack, for perhaps bragging rights, and not for a huge level of investment. So she's, you know, sorry Paddy Power, bankrupted you there, that's 20 quid you'll never see again. So a lot of our television communications and mainstream advertising will be aimed at the mass market and trying to get them a little bit more into racing. The second segment that we market to, or we target are called proper punters, which could be kind of like an ITV4 audience, or somebody who will bet perhaps 3 times a week, know what they're doing, and they do it for cognitive challenge. So they do it probably to win money, and it's a test of bookie versus punter. And everything we do, from our television advertising to our customer marketing, emails, blog pieces, social media, will essentially try to slice up our approach between these two audiences. And then why we do what we do. So from 1988, Paddy Power was definitely a brand that's built on doing things a little differently. And we have very little interest in just throwing our name onto something and trying to say that that's worth X amount of money. So there's 3 examples here which just show that, which I'll talk through. The first one is a tweet showing Graham Souness being involved in our Brighton Pride activation. So for the last 2 years, we've been a headline sponsor of Brighton Pride, and really taking a stand against homophobia in football. For last year's running of that, we used Graham as an ally for the LGBT community to kind of come out as a spokesperson against homophobia, and did that alongside a 50-foot game changer balloon through the streets of Brighton, and got a tremendous amount of coverage for it, as well as raising awareness of a key issue. In the middle is probably something that people are very aware of, and it's the monstrosity of a jersey we built for Huddersfield Town as part of our sponsorship of them, or in fact kind of unsponsoring Huddersfield. So the rug pull on that was really Paddy Power knows its place and it's not on your jersey. So Huddersfield are sponsored by Paddy Power, but of course with no Paddy Power on the jersey. So essentially giving the jersey back to the fans. And the last one of that is just a little example of something we did for the Stairs Hurdle sponsorship at Cheltenham this year. And if Vicky plays it, it was the world's first moving musical, which had some previous winners of that race, such as Barracuda, co-designed by Ruby Walsh, the correct Noki to horse background and all the And then just want to talk a little bit about the challenges in racing. There's 3 slides here, which just kind of, racing is a sport which has plenty of issues, but there's 3 I wanted to touch on in particular. And number 1 is the naming conventions and race names. I'm relatively new to the world of racing, despite working for Paddy Power for a while. My remit in racing is relatively new, but if you step back and look at things like, brands trying to take media value from the naming of races, and we're included there. You get everything from the St. Christopher Carlsfield Bournemouth supporting Gift of Sight handicap, down to the Paddy Power from the Horse's Mouth podcast novice hurdle. You see these race names everywhere. You'll see them called out at race day as well. So I think there's a job to do there in trying to tidy up the narrative of racing, really from the ground up. The next slide probably shows a better example of the challenge there.
And Moror over the final fence, and the HannonTravel.com most appropriately dressed lady win a trip to the Dominican Republic handicap chase.
So quite the mouthful. It's probably a long way from the Paddy Power Gold Cup, but just on that kind of taking the piss in the wrong way aspect, there's a bit of work to do. If we move on then to the next one, Irish racing has suffered a little bit. RTE does a tremendous job. Showing, I think it's even gone upwards from 26 races a year. Racing TV has obviously got the deal for Irish fixtures. Not deal runs for a bit yet, and they've got a big subscriber base that's probably gone up in the UK since this year a little bit. But as a result of that, Irish viewers have been deprived of free-to-air Irish racing, and as a result of that, obviously betting turnover and more importantly, interest goes down. If people can't find it and can't find it on the televisions, then it's hard to get interested in something. Same goes for football, same goes for anything. So while Irish racing and UK racing were on at the races, that was reaching potential audience of something like 14 million through Sky, and that's gone down incredibly. And again, not to slight the job that anybody does on racing. We were chatting earlier. Racing has dedicated newspapers, it's got dedicated channels, it's got a huge business and industry and sport behind it. ITV, Virgin, RT all do a great job in it, but if people and customers can't see racing clearly, then there's clearly going to be a job of work to get people interested in it. The next slide just shows a little bit of what that means to people. And we're talking about a world where if Roy Keane and Gary Neville and Souness go head to head in football punditry terms, it makes for some unbelievably good television, and you'll see that shared socially incredibly, and that helps promote football, helps get people interested in football. But in racing, if you've got, if people can't find the product is one thing, and then traditionally, even up to February, I suppose, this year when there have been some changes, when you had UK and Irish races, going off either on top of each other or within minutes of each other. You've got people trying to share screens, or, you know, watch split screens. You've got no analysis leading up to races. You've got no kind of follow-on review of races properly. You know, clearly here you've got jockeys, you've got broadcasters, you've got a lot of people giving out about that. And it's fine, you know, we can point people to a streaming product as much as possible and say, look, you can watch this race on your mobile, and that's fine, but you're missing that beautiful, big, lush TV experience.
And I think just to add to that too, and it's about, we obviously want to get more and more people involved in racing and interested in our sport as well. And it's those behind the scenes stories and the information that comes behind the races that engage more people as well. And I think there's another, Rob, we were on another seminar meeting, and the FAI were on too, and they were saying about all the behind the scenes content they're pushing out currently because there's no games and things like that, and how that really engaged their audience. And I think that's so key, and that's why this current situation too, there needs to be some improvements on it so that people can see that, get the story behind the races.
And I think, yeah, like two things there before I forget, I just have to spark in something with me, Vicky, talking about, I was watching Card from the FAI talking about their stuff, but I think bookmakers, for all the criticism we get, have been producing some unbelievably good racing content in the last 12 months, and that includes Bet365 and some of their documentaries. Betfair did a tremendous Tiger Roll documentary, and Paddy Power have been promoting racing heavily for years. So, you know, bookies have actually, you know, started to invest more in long-term content and in long-form content. And there are kind of some green shoots here. I think I mentioned from February, there are now these kind of non-traditional race times going off between Ireland and the UK, which aim to give a little bit of time each side of racing for the viewers. But a good bit of work to do here.
Definitely.
And then I don't need to dwell too long on this, but it's just that the Irish industry in particular has been very vocal about this. You know, Ruby Walsh calling it a fiasco about races going off at the same time in Ireland and England. Down at Naas, they've suffered too as a result. A little bit of note, I won't bore too many people with too many numbers here, but it's a survey of people, sports fans from last year. 2,000 people were interviewed about their habits in terms of betting and sport consumption. So mass market flirts on your left and my right. Don't ask me which is which. These are people who would typically bet on big festivals and versus the general population. And really what this shows in nearly every instance is that, you know, pulling out a few figures in terms of mass market flirts and people who bet weekly, 75% will bet on football versus 21% will bet on horse racing. You take that down to betting monthly, 65% on football, 30% on horse racing, and then betting annually, it's 53% on football and 20% bet on horse racing. You see there that everything to do with racing is operating in the shadow of the Premier League and the monster that is. And for a sport that is so linked to betting as horse racing is, like it absolutely improves absolutely adds to your entertainment and enjoyment of horse racing. And yet it's fighting this massive battle against football for interest from the public. Then, right, back to business. This was a slide that was supposed to ground us and get back to the Dublin Racing Festival. And we're going to chat a little bit now about that activation and how we went about it and what we did, what was successful and what we think we can improve for next year.
Exactly. So as we touched on earlier, you know, and everyone on this webinar will agree with and know that sponsorships and the investment fee into the sponsorship rights is only one element of it. Any good sponsorship is made through the activation that's put in behind that, through the resource and investment into the activation as well. So we're just going to give a couple of highlights of the activation that we did for the Paddy Power Irish Gold Cup. It's by no means all of it. It's by no means, there's definite room for improvement too, which is something Paul and I just wanted to touch on too. This is just what we did. We know there's definitely learnings out of it as well. So and other sports have done lots of other different amazing stuff as well. So we started off with obviously the announcement of the Irish Gold Cup. And it was just to kick the whole campaign off. So it was to engage and utilise the media to announce the partnership and start the brand association for this event and for this historic race as well. And it was supported by a big social campaign as well to engage our customers both of our customers too, and get them starting to talk about it and about the partnership and even about the race as well. And we did quite a bit on social as well from a Leopardstown point of view about the history of the race and the great horses too, because our racing fans are really, they're really emotive, and they're very passionate about the sport too, and passionate about the great horses and who participate in our sport as well. So it's great to get them talking about it as well and start the conversation from a third party point of view. Another element too here we did before the event too was we did a preview night in the Leopardstown Inn, which is a pub local to Leopardstown Racecourse, and it was a week before the event. The aim of this was to engage with the local audience as well, and then to use Racing Stars to promote the event and the partnership as well to the local audience, but also we live streamed it as well, and to engage with the audience digitally, which was actually really successful too. And they engaged too by sending in questions too that we asked the panelists then live on the night as well. So there was a good engagement both on site. It was a full to capacity event on site, and then a good following digitally as well. Another element of this which worked really well for us was that the Leopardstown Inn are a partner of Leopardstown anyway, they're our official pub partner, but it was in using our wider partnerships too to support the Paddy Power Irish Gold Cup. So it's looking outside just the partnership between us and our partner for the race, Paddy Power, and seeing how we can utilise our other partnerships to the mutual benefit of everyone involved.
Okay. I think I still owe David Jennings dinner for doing this first section. I think just something again that reminded me on this, it's that why are we investing in racing? That I think you have to invest in the things that people care about and investing from the ground up. So that obviously starts with a sponsorship, but being local in this is incredibly important as well. And you know, engaging that local community. I don't know, I can't remember what the capacity was, but if it's 80 people, it's still a pretty interested and invested audience. So I would never overlook something like the importance of a preview night and 80 people and trying to captivate them.
Exactly.
So then I just chat a little bit about our approach to the advertising about this, and just two examples. So these were created with our Irish creative agency called The Public House, who are Dublin based. And again, kind of the classic marketing thing is that who you were going after, but also who you weren't going after. So we're very comfortable not going after rugby fans, at least in terms of not, you know, maybe trying to piss them off a little bit. And it seems kind of incredible now to think that this event was happening while the Six Nations was on, because it seems like another lifetime ago almost at this stage, the way things have panned out. So it was the opening, Dublin Racing Festival coincided with the opening weekend of the Six Nations. So, you know, on one hand, you're trying to big up racing against rugby, and, you know, we don't spend a hell of a lot of time marketing about rugby. You know, very proud of the Irish team, and we've done bits and pieces, but we generally wouldn't go above the line with too much rugby. So we care even less about rugby than Italy. Seemed like a very a happy place to take a pot shot at both rugby and the Italians. You know, this was a piece that was done for the activation up around Leopardstown itself. And then the one on the left, Leave January's Kale Smoothies, and I'll talk about the gate. When we were thinking about this campaign, you know, people, a lot of people will try to be good around January. And then this event kicking off around February 2nd, February 1st, it was really seen as that one big weekend. People were paid, Dublin Racing Fest was on, and it's kind of get off your dry horse. We weren't, you know, necessarily saying, you know, let's all go on the lash together and get belugas. We were saying, look, here's a chance to let your hair down and have a great weekend celebrating. So not targeting people who were, you know, let me say, we're targeting people who are kind of being holier than thou about their, you know, kale smoothies and being a bit moralistic about what they'd done versus January. So again, you know, we were very comfortable who we weren't targeting with these pieces.
Yeah, and this too was, from a Leopardstown point of view, was a huge benefit, obviously, that Paddy Power was supporting the sponsorship too with this activation. So there was a massive campaign, both out of home TV and online, but the out of home went through, I think, a number of sites pulled throughout Dublin as well. So that was supported, that's, yeah.
And I think, yeah, again, as I mentioned, there's two jobs to do here. There's a job to promote the festival, there's a job to promote the Gold Cup, but also racing itself and kind of being ballsy. But, you know, our four brand drivers are being sharp-witted, being daring, being one of your mates, and being on the ball. So, you know, that centres our approach to advertising. If we look at the next slide, which shows a couple more examples, a few more examples, You know, again, taking aim at rugby. This lot will be shoulder to shoulder the whole way. Again, referring to the horses, big strong fellas, and not a cauliflower ear in sight. Again, referring to the horses. A sporting event with more than 6 competitors. And well, although, you know, I think every race at Dublin Racing Festival has more than 6 competitors, did they, Vicky?
Yeah, you're all right. Yeah, you're safe on that.
Safe on that. And we'll answer Ireland's now, which I think was pretty brutal, but the agency really loved it, so we kept it in the mix of things. You know, we did a pretty extensive media plan behind us. I think we had 57 out-of-home sites around Dublin. We had a Leinster-wide radio plan, as well as some other pockets targeting those counties with local radio who are big into racing. So extending a little bit beyond just Leinster. And as Vicky said, trying to treat it almost like a tourism style event to come to Dublin and enjoy this.
And this was too supported, like Leopardstown as well had an overall marketing campaign, multi-platform campaign to promote Dublin Racing Festival as well. So our campaign as well, we had a massive out-of-home campaign, a national and a local radio. We did a lot of cinema too, and then a lot of digital to support it as well. So it was about these 2 campaigns working together and promoting ultimately Dublin Racing Festival and then the Paddy Power Irish Gold Cup as well. But I think Paul and I both touched on too is probably a learning, and there's always learnings from these things going forward, is to plan a little bit more in advance and integrate more and see how we can support both our campaigns, support each other a little bit better and be a bit more strategic about how we do it.
Yeah, and just I think maybe, I don't know, what you might be referring to there, Vicky, is we brought out identical radio ads pretty much because we didn't talk to each other about our own media plans. And that's probably a nice learning to do, to kind of just ask the question, what are you guys doing in media and what are we doing? So while we had, you know, a sign-off process with Leopardstown, we didn't actually get into the specifics of scripting. So we had done a radio ad with Jerry Hannon, who had been responsible for a brilliant piece of commentary around Roaring Bull at Christmas. And so we got him to do a brilliant radio ad for us talking about the kale smoothie aspect. But, you know, clearly brilliant ideas aren't always that original. And Vicky and Carl had a very similar idea and brought out an almost identical radio ad.
At least we're on the same page.
Again, just a couple of examples. So the Lewis nomination is the first time we've done that. So took over the green line ahead of the Racing Festival with some of our messaging as well, which is a nice thing to do. Again, going for that mass market audience and people who mightn't necessarily been aware of the Dublin Racing Festival. And then on the right, which kind of just shows the benefit of what we do in advertising, Paddy Power. Now we've got this brilliant event behind it. So, you know, the things you do can be pretty much linked to turnover and how that event performs year on year. So this is a commercial message which would have been carried in press, which is our only direct response vehicle in Ireland because we can't advertise offers in radio or television. So our print advertising tends to be quite hard work in terms of offers. So this is one of our money back specials, essentially an insurance policy, which backs up the event as well.
So this is so we kind of moved on. So there was some examples of what we did before the event too, but then another element of it too was activation during the event. So just to go back slightly, Dublin Racing Festival, there was a couple of aims with it to promote horse racing and to showcase the best of Irish horse racing too, with a card of top quality races. But secondly too was to engage with a wider audience. So there was the Horse Racing Ireland National Horse Racing Survey in 2018. The research was done at the end of 2017, identified that the potential growth market for racing was between 25 to 34-year-olds with a Dublin bias. And that actually was one of our founding things for Dublin Racing Festival, and what we based some of our when we were creating the festival, our ideas on is engaging with that audience, so that audience might not traditionally be so involved with horse racing too, but what they did like, and we did a lot of research on what they did like, and it was like going to events, really high quality sporting events, to have that be there, be at the top quality events, but then also too in between the races they wanted a variety of entertainment. And as you'll see with any festival now in Ireland and further afield too, even music festivals, you have your main act, but you have a lot of supporting activities too, and that's something Dublin Racing Festival we try to do too. We've got a really strong musical entertainment program behind it. We've got different areas, we have culinary displays and things like that, and there's a lot of culture elements that we include in the festival. But it's all about entertaining that audience too. So when we talked to Paddy Power, and they would talking about opportunities to engage with the customers on the day and knowing, you know, their background and how much fun and how much crack they could provide. It was of a real interest to us too. So we tried to work with them as much as possible to accommodate any ideas they might have with the customer engagement on the site during the day.
So again, yeah, just to emphasize that these pictures weren't taken during the height of customer engagement. I think they were taken in a week in advance during setup. So activated through a different agency called CMS in Dublin as well. You know, these were pulled together with about a week to go when we felt we could do a little bit more and bring a little bit more to the table. So I think these aspects of building games and building customer engagement mechanics around the course are something we can definitely get better on. But the examples here briefly, Flip Your Lid was a game where people basically threw their hat onto a person dressed as a horse to win some prizes, primarily Paddy Power Lucky Pants. Hold On to Your Peakies is a travelling wind tunnel, essentially, where somebody gets into it and tries to grab as many bet slips in this instance as they can within a minute. And Yay or Nay was a simple quiz show. So again, you got 14,000 people or so around there on the day of racing. So trying to engage them and let them know it's about entertainment, not just about racing, is pretty important to us.
And again, during the event, and as I mentioned at the start, one of the rights too is ownership of that second day and priority branding on that day as well. So this just gives a small snapshot of the excellent branding that Paddy Power did, and there was much more as well. So I don't know, Paul, maybe you want to point out your kind of highlights from the branding on the day.
Yeah, I think the one on the bottom, the winning frame, is probably my favourite piece. Again, suggested to us by CMS Marketing that you know, building this giant gold frame for the winner. That was probably my favourite thing. It looked great in the day, and it was there all day. We were talking earlier in the week about the standardised branding, which you can see around the race course on the actual track itself, not just the Paddy Power logo. And there's an account on Twitter we were talking about called Racing Tales, which was, you know, shows races from the ages. And I was looking at a race in England from 1981 or 1983, and that traditional on-course branding effectively hasn't changed since the 80s. And that's something we'd like to give a kick up the arse to. I know there's challenges around it in terms of taking digital onto the tracks, but like, I think in both the sponsorships in the UK and Ireland, I think we can do a bit better there than just slapping your branding on something. And it's great for the television. You've got a big, clear message. You know, not a lot of time when the cameras goes by, but it just doesn't look that original or that innovative anymore. The thing in the middle is probably taking a step forward, and I think we can improve on that again. And that's the idea of the enhanced winning line, and it's something that Randox does very well for the Grand National. We tried to build a target for the Gold Cup, and I think we'll look to take that a couple of steps beyond again for 2021.
I think that's a challenge too, as an industry, racing as an industry, but us as a rights holder too. We've got to help push this too, to how we can be innovative, how we can develop as well. Racing, as with many sports, is steeped in history and tradition too. But it's about how we remember the history and the tradition and honour it, but also move forward and be innovative, so that we're still an attractive proposition to sponsors too, and we can develop, and that will ultimately benefit the sport too. The more partners we have involved with the sport. So this is just going to be a quick video too of the highlights of Paddy Power Irish Gold Cup Day, and you'll get an overview of all the activations and the branding as well. So hopefully you can hear it when I press play. So that kind of gives a good overview of some of the activations that were done in the day, and goes back to two is Paddy Power really took ownership from the moment you arrived, with the signs up the avenue. So you got out of the bus or you got off of the car park, the minute you stepped onto Leopardstown property, there you really knew who was involved and who was the main partner on the day, from right the way up the avenue to the turnstiles and then inside the site as well. So, and then also too, the branding on the finishing line and around the parade ring and everything too was optimized too, so that went with for TV as well, so that reached a wider audience that was on site during the day.
Yeah, I've nothing to add to that. The music has blown my mind at this hour of the morning. So,
great. Okay, well look, thanks a million, Vicky and Paul. Excellent real insight into the way that it is, you know, a partnership as opposed to just a sponsorship. But I love that sort of to and fro about the, you know, the lessons that you learn about it as well is always really important. What we'll do now is that we're going to open up to the floor to ask any questions that you have in terms of either the mechanics behind the sponsorship or some of the more philosophical stuff, maybe even behind some of Paddy Power's other ones which we saw there. I love the Graham Souness and Pride at Brighton and some of the things that football has managed to move away from in recent years as well, just down at the bottom of that tweet. What we might do now is I might just ask Vicky to just sort of, that's it, close it down so that you can see us in a little bit more detail. Just to kick us off, the little Q&A button down at the bottom of your screens or the top of your screens, depending on your setup. If you just want to enter in the questions in there, we'll sort of take them as they come through. One of the things that I wanted to sort of touch on was, we know that when we go into a sponsorship, that, and you mentioned, Paul, there about, you know, sort of investing in the sport and those kind of, you know, the softer bits around the edges. One of the key elements is in terms of knowing what you want coming out of it and then how it matched up to it. So when you came out of the weekend, and before we all got tied up in everything else that's happened since then, did you have an opportunity to sit down and actually run through things? And how did that go? Is that a checklist that you're working off, or was it something that you realized, okay, so year one, we learn what we want to know, and then year two, this is how we're going to actually figure that out?
Yeah, good question. I would say that in the last couple of years, we've got less bogged down in granular, quick reporting after an event, especially something like Dublin Racing Festival, which then will lead to Cheltenham and other, you know, Punchestown in a typical year. So we will definitely take a longer term view on performance. So the quickest thing we'll do is I'll email the racing traders on Sunday night and go, look, how was performance of the Dublin Racing Festival? What did performance of the Gold Cup look like? And then we'll look at different splits and different customer segments. So we do know that the mass market customer base grew about 15% year on year, which is a good result for us from that. That gives us one thing. Stuff like PR coverage and even racing performance, you can't judge as absolute in 1 year. So PR performance, could be at the whim of world events, and that you think you're going to get, X amount of, you might get something on the back page of a paper, or you might get a news spread in, the Irish Daily Star on your coverage if it's a big thing, but something else might happen in the world, a news event that takes, pressure on pagination in newspapers away from that. So I don't think you can judge PR coverage the way you would have done even 5 years ago, as being a barometer of success. Online coverage, I would put slightly less weight on again. So I think your sponsorship webinar touched on it a little bit as well, Rob. There are probably 6 or 7 key things you look on, but with something like the Dublin Racing Festival, we'll definitely be looking at kind of a long-term, multi-year picture on how that's gone, because I think as an organisation, we've certainly dipped into things and jumped out of them again, and you don't really get any kind of learnings or long-term benefit from that. I think in the last couple of years, we've learned that, look, you're either in it, for the long haul and to build something, or you're not.
Okay, I think that'll be music to Vicky's ears as well as to rights holders everywhere about the value of actually sticking with a sponsorship. I must say that
there are, so like we are and have, put our money where our mouth is in terms of racing. And, you know, we're a racing business, racing drives the brand. So like one of my questions when I got the job was like, why aren't we investing more in racing? And it seems like an easy decision to make, but something else is going to be a victim of that. Some other sponsorship, some other activation, some other thing we do. And you have to make sacrifice. It's certainly not that, look, you're going to go incremental with your budget every time and start to invest more. Like, you know, you have to make brutal decisions then about what you don't invest in. And that, you know, I won't reveal them here, but certainly things will suffer.
Sure. And Noel Martin, who was involved in one of the earlier sponsorship measurement ones as well, he's asking the question as well as that granular level of detail. But the sort of sense of it is that Paddy Power is a cash business, well, you know, online, but cash business. So it's very much, you know, comparing today to tomorrow to yesterday to, you know, and the rest.
Yeah.
How do you attribute, you know, some of the lift that you might have seen from Cheltenham? Is there a way, or is it more sort of instinctive that you feel as to how, you know, what you did at Leopardstown on the 2nd of February translates into what you're getting from Cheltenham on the 10th of March?
Yeah, another good question. And I think you'd look at it as probably 4 events rather than one event. And you would look at it going from, and what we're trying to do is join the dots a little bit better. And I'll even rewind from the Dublin Racing Festival a little bit. So as a business, we started investing in sponsorships again this year. So went from New Year's Day racing at Cheltenham to Trials Day at Cheltenham, to Dublin Racing Festival, Trials Day at Cheltenham, and that then leads to the Cheltenham Festival itself. But the Cheltenham Festival is probably the most important week of the year for us. But that then in itself should have led to the European Football Championships, which will then lead to back to the Premier League. And so it goes round and round and round. So these mass market events are, you know, a big customer play, and nothing should be treated really in itself as a be all and end all. So if we looked at Dublin Racing Festival, so we put on, you know, 100 new customers, you know, off the top of my head, you know, nobody was going to be saying, God, that was good, that wasn't good, whatever. It's just, you know, treated as a very small, you know, small element in year one as itself. But, you know, activations is one part, retention is another part, PR coverage, turnover, you know, is one thing. So I think in a couple of years' time, we'll sit down and look, you know, all the work is being pulled together now in terms of how we performed in the UK and Ireland on racing. But then, you know, we'll look at the different cohorts, different segments, you know, retention, activation, but we'll never kind of look at just the Monday after Dublin Racing Festival and say, okay, how did it do? And then make a decision based on performance within that weekend. Okay.
I've got one for you, Vicky. Anonymous. It hasn't come up with the name, so my apologies to whoever has asked the very good question. Vicky, did you see any negative feedback from any other sponsors about the volume and the sort of, you know, the presence of Paddy Power? Because obviously, as you mentioned in there were a number of sponsors that were there on the day, and some of them that had been there from the outset and the beginning. So was it that they were in some way sort of negative about what you gave to Paddy Power, or did that perhaps inspire them to actually go and have the same kind of a conversation about, well, what can we do to make this better?
I think the key to this is communication with all our partners. So everyone knows what's going on and there's no surprises. So we've got a number of other sponsors on the day. And from the moment Paddy Power came on board, I rang and I talked to them all and explained that Paddy Power were taking on the feature sponsorship of the Irish Gold Cup, and explained the benefits as well and what they could actually bring to the whole day, which would benefit every partner on the day as well. So Paddy Power obviously invested hugely in the promotion of Dublin Racing Festival as a whole, and bringing extra people to the day, which would then bring extra brand exposure to our other partners on the day. And it's just about being, as I said, communication and two-way communication, but being clear about what everyone's rights are, making sure they're happy with, and listening too. If people have feedback, taking that on board, and either going back to Paddy Power and saying, well, can we take this bit back and give it to someone else, or just working with them to make sure everyone's happy. I'd be fairly confident in saying that all our partners on the day were very happy. And again, there's some things that are out of your hands, and as Paul will know, on the day, Faugheen won the Flowgas Novice Chase. So in itself, from a PR point of view, as Paul said, that took its own life and took over much of the media and PR coverage out of that day, to the huge benefit of Flowgas, who were the sponsor on the day, which was great for them because they've been a partner of ours for ages and support throughout the whole year. But that was completely uncontrollable. There was nothing you could do about that. So it's about maximising the opportunities that come by too for all our partners. And I think they all worked very well in tandem. There was no one begrudged Paddy Power came on. They saw the benefits of Paddy Power coming on. And yes, that video you saw was very much weighted towards Paddy Power, but there was an awful lot of other branding from our other partners going on. And also to the priorities and aims and objectives of each of our partners would be very different. So what Flowgas might want, and sorry, I'm just using them as an example, but what they might want to be very different out of their sponsorship might be very different to what Paddy Power want out of it. So Flowgas do a massive hospitality piece as well, and one of their main aims is engaging with all their high value clients and bringing them to the event, entertaining them all having a good day as well. So and then there's a wider thing as well outside, which we do in other ways with Paddy Power, but with Flowgas a wider element to the partnership. While they sponsor on Dublin Racing Festival, they partner with us. We take our partners throughout the whole year, they're annual partners, so we give exclusive opportunities to our partners throughout the year, so they work with us on a ticket offer for their customers throughout the summer too, so that's another big benefit to them. So it's every partner's aims and objectives are different, and it's about making sure they achieve their aims and objectives and communicating with them to make sure there's no surprises.
Okay, I think it's also great to see some innovation. You know, there's nothing in the world has really been new since the wheel, perhaps you could argue. And I was involved in horse racing sponsorship for a long time before I set up Sport for Business. But I was struck from the point of view of a spectator by the frame, as you've mentioned there, Paul, was something that I hadn't actually sort of seen in quite such a, in an upfront way. And there are other examples as well. I remember Emirates doing sponsorship and doing the stewardess sort of welcome message out there on pitches and things like that. Just, putting something which has been there for an awful long time, but just looking at it with a slight tilt. And hopefully, I think anybody that's involved in sponsorship that was there on the day will have taken from that and thought, oh, okay, I'm going to ring, it might be Evan in the Curragh, or it might be Sinead over in Galway, and I'm going to actually sort of get them to do something like that for me as well. But also to take it on to the next level. And just the positioning of some of the promotional messages and the advertising and things like that, I thought was really good. We've got a couple more questions as well coming in now. Sean Brett asks, right bang up to the minute conversation here. From your perspective, Paul, how do you see the economics of sponsorship working if we're behind closed doors, if spectators can't attend, and if that brand experience, you can't do hold on to your peakies, you can't do a yay or a nay behind closed doors. So now, heaven forbid that we're still having this conversation in 10 months time around next year, touch every piece of wood I can find. But how does that work? Is the sponsorship experience on site, where does that come in connection to the wider one that people are looking at?
It disappears, doesn't it? Because you just can't do it. So economically, you've clearly got to tier your deals in a different way, where you've got, your scenario planning. So, you will have a deal where you're allowing for full attendance, and what you'll do is a customer activation there, and then you've got a proposed financial package with, what if there's nobody there and it's just a television event? So you're clearly not doing customer engagement. Beneath that, there's probably another level that if there are, if attendance is allowed and if it's a full house, you've still got to be tonally appropriate to the times. And if nobody knows what it's going to be like in November, December, even into January and February, about what social distancing may look like at events. So right now, we still don't know. Like, customer engagement could be one thing that just falls off a cliff, and that you simply won't do those activations, and it will become a sponsorship for television event. And, you will go back to those very simple traditional signage and potentially bring them on digitally in some way. But, customer engagement falls off a cliff, and deals will have to be negotiated differently as a result to take awareness of that.
Okay, and I think that's going to apply to everybody. That's going to apply to to Guinness around the Six Nations, and to Vodafone sponsorship of the Irish rugby team, if those games go ahead when they go ahead.
Well, I remember, like, customer engagement things can be a tricky one to do, around a sports event, because you're at a sports event, and like Vicky said, horse race is a good example, because you've got a set amount of time between races, and it's almost like a music fest. You've got time to grab a pint and maybe have a chat or do something else. Like, you don't want to do something that's just a vanity play for the brand either, and that costs like 50 grand to do, but gets 8 people through it, and it's an enormous waste of time. You do have to do something that is genuinely useful and genuinely entertaining and give something back to the customers, whether it's, good merchandise, good gift, good money, good something, but, make it worth their while if they're going to engage with and don't waste your money on elaborate activations either. And because we've done them, and I've definitely done them and learned as a result.
Maybe the E&A has still got a role to play, just bringing people in from a virtual existence somewhere out there as well.
It's a great...
Wouldn't try throwing the hat at the screen to land on it. That might end up with... we don't want to hurt your cat in the background there, or that wonderful... he's just over your other shoulder.
Wow.
Live as we go, or that wonderful photograph or the painting of Daniel O'Connell in the background as well. We'll come back to that in a second. We mentioned there about Guinness and the Six Nations, that clash that you have, and brilliantly activated for the proportion of the population for whom rugby is not their be all and their end all. But if I think next year, next year's schedules, there's something that's written in invisible ink. But if you were to move a week earlier to avoid the Six Nations, is that something that would be on the cards from your perspective, Vicky? You're squeezed in between Christmas, which is your own, sort of own sporting event now at the moment, and Cheltenham on the other end of it. Like, in an ideal world, would you be going solus on a weekend, or does the benefit of having a big additional crowd coming into Dublin or having another sport really sort of make a big difference?
I think that's quite a relevant question, actually, and in particular to 2021, before the whole current situation with coronavirus. But it was actually it's something we were looking at. We were talking with Horse Racing Ireland about the fixture for 2021, because a part of our campaign, obviously, once Dublin Racing Festival is finished, is we go live with an early bird ticket offer to try and capture people once they've had a good time to book tickets for the following year. So we needed to know those dates the following year, and actually it was scheduled for the 31st of January 2021 originally, and then but we looked at that and we went back to when we were creating Dublin Racing Festival, what were our key drivers, and one big part of it that Paddy Power worked on as well, but even before that, was that it was the first weekend in February. It was people who got paid. It was a celebration of January being over, the first real big festival of the year. So we kind of had to stay true to that. It had worked with us for the first few years, so we didn't really want to move away from that. So we actually put the case that we actually wanted to move a week later to the 6th and 7th of February 2021. The caveat of that was, if we were on the 31st of January, we wouldn't have clashed with the Six Nations. By moving to the 6th and 7th of February, we do clash with that first game of the Six Nations. But we actually look at it as a bit of an opportunity, and it has worked in our favour too. It does bring an influx of people into Dublin. The Six Nations may be on one day, they've still got another day, and people generally will take the whole weekend. They take a weekend away in Dublin. So we actually target those people in advance that are coming, say, for the match, and the match is on the Saturday. We target them for the Sunday. Continue experience at Dublin, and we do a lot of digital geo-targeting on that to encourage them to have a great sporting weekend. But it's not just about the rugby, it's about a sporting weekend. So that actually has worked in our favour the past couple of years, definitely. And it's about looking at opportunity. We do look at our race timings so that you can watch the big races and then get to the rugby afterwards, should you wish to. So we try and accommodate it that way. And then also too, on site, is what we do is we play the rugby on all the big screens, so we continue the event after the racing. So it's a big sporting day, so we have all the big screens throughout the site. We have in the marquee as well, and we show the rugby. So we tell people, look, extend your day. Do you know what I mean? Watch the rugby here. If you can't get to the match live in the Aviva, then have it in a sporting stadium. Have that atmosphere of being in a sports event, and watch it at Leopardstown. So that our racing audience too, but then people too would travel to Dublin for the match even without tickets and things like that. So we're targeting them and trying to get them to come and enjoy it at Leopardstown as well. So no, we do see it as an opportunity, and we work with it as opposed to seeing it as a real big clash and something that we would try and avoid.
I think it's always the case of being big enough and standing up on your own 2 feet as well. Even if Even if the Aviva Stadium was full with 50,000 people, all of whom were from Dublin, it would still be less than 2% of the population. And that idea, like there's an awful lot more people that are watching it in pubs and in their homes. Why not bring them to a live sporting arena as well to get the double benefit of it? I do like you mentioned there about the geo-targeting. I remember doing a piece with you, sort of coming into the festival about that level of targeting and that level of knowing your customer and talking to your customer, and that, which I think there's big lessons to be learned there from others in sport. I'm conscious of the time now. We're bumping up on 12. I can't let you go, Paul, without just asking the question about that fabulous painting. Yours is very nice as well, Vicky, with the horse, and I've got one of Croke Park, but that looks a bit special there with Daniel in the background.
It's Daniel O'Connell. Yeah, it's saying it was a piece of work done by Mazer, bought at a silent auction for quite the bargain. Some Damien Dempsey lyrics along the bottom, and that's my computer setup is here, and that's the only wall that fit. So I had no option but to. I couldn't change it this morning. There
you go. It's one of the unspoken things of all of these Zoom calls, that we're all looking at what's in the background, but nobody is talking about it. But it's just too good. Sorry, for bursting in on the privacy of your artwork collection.
It's quite all right. We're all in it together.
Well, look, thanks a million to everybody for coming along here and for being a part of this event this morning and the whole series. There's plenty more to come on it as well. Special thanks to Paul and Vicky, very open and really sharing, that some of the granular detail and some of the big picture thinking that goes into what was one of the most special new sponsorships of the year, and which undoubtedly now will be a hot favourite to win all of the awards for the very best sponsorship of the year, because it might be the only one that we actually get to see put out in full. No. Hopefully not that. Sport for Business will continue every morning. We'll be dropping into your inboxes at around about 9 or 9:30 with all of the latest news on what's happening in and around the world of non-sport. We've got a meeting coming up this week now, looking where we bring together members of the Sport for Business community to talk about social distancing and contact sport, how it's defined, and how we can potentially look to meet some of those target dates, which got our hopes up on Friday, but which on closer look might be a little bit more challenging. We'll try and stay relevant. We'll try and keep talking to you, our community of viewers and readers. But for now, I'll let you all get back to the rest of the world with a special thanks. We can't do a full round of applause that it deserves, but in a virtual sense, to Paul Mallon from Paddy Power and to Vicky Donlan of Leopardstown Racecourse. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Vicky.
Thanks very much, guys. Cheers.